This magical story you're about to hear is lovingly created by FMTJ.
A long time ago in the golden sands of ancient Egypt, there stood three enormous pyramids. They reached up into the bright blue sky like mountains made by hand. These were not ordinary buildings. They were tombs, resting places for the great kings of Egypt called pharaohs. One warm evening, a young girl named Amara sat outside her family's tent at the edge of the desert. She gazed at the pyramids glowing softly in the sunset. Her grandfather sat beside her carving a small wooden boat. "Grandfather," Amara said, "who built those giant pyramids?" Her grandfather smiled. Thousands of skilled workers, builders, artists, engineers, they worked together for many years, moving huge blocks of stone across the sand. Amara's eyes widened. How did they lift such heavy stones? "With ramps, ropes, and cleverness," he replied. "They were some of the smartest people in the world." That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the pyramids. She imagined the workers singing as they hauled the stones. She pictured the pharaohs resting inside, wrapped in linen, surrounded by treasures and painted walls. When the moon rose high and silver, Amara heard a soft whisper. It seemed to come from the desert itself. She sat up and looked out through the tent opening. A gentle golden glow was coming from the largest pyramid. Curious and unafraid, Amara slipped on her sandals and walked quietly into the cool night. The sand was soft beneath her feet. The stars above were so bright they looked like tiny lanterns hung across the sky. As she got closer to the pyramid, the glow grew warmer. Then, standing at the base of the giant stone structure, she saw a figure. It was a boy about her age, dressed in a white linen tunic. His skin glowed faintly like he was made of moonlight. "Hello," the boy said with a kind smile. "My name is Kenti. I lived here a very long time ago." Amara wasn't scared. Something about him felt safe. "Are you a spirit?" she asked. Kenti nodded. "I help guard the pyramid and the stories it holds. Would you like to see inside?" Amara's heart raced with excitement. "Yes, please." Kenti touched the stone wall and a hidden doorway appeared. Together they stepped inside. The air was cool and smelled like old dust and stone. Torches along the walls lit themselves as they walked. "This pyramid was built for a great pharaoh," Kenti explained. "It took 20 years to finish. Workers came from all over Egypt. They were paid with food, shelter, and respect. They were not slaves. They were proud to build something so magnificent." Amara ran her hand along the smooth stone walls. "It must have been so hard." "It was," Kenti said. "But they believed the pyramid would help the pharaoh reach the stars. Look," he pointed up at carvings on the ceiling. They showed boats sailing across the sky, carrying the sun and moon. They walked deeper into the pyramid. The walls were covered in colorful paintings. There were birds, gods with animal heads, and scenes of daily life. Farmers planting crops, fishermen on the Nile, children playing with wooden toys. "These paintings tell stories," Kenti said. "They help the pharaoh remember his life and guide him in the next world." Amara stopped in front of a painting of workers building a pyramid. They looked strong and focused. Some were measuring, some were carving, some were moving stones on wooden sleds. "They worked as a team," she whispered. "Exactly," Kenti said. "One person alone could never build a pyramid. It took thousands working together with one goal. They entered a grand chamber. In the center was a stone box called a sarcophagus. It was decorated with gold and blue paint. Hieroglyphs covered every surface. "This is where the pharaoh rests," Kenty said softly. "His body was wrapped carefully in linen to preserve it. We call that a mummy. It was done with great care and love." Amara looked around the room. There were jars, jewelry, and small statues. "Why are all these things here?" "The Egyptians believed the pharaoh would need them in the afterlife," Kenty explained. "Food, tools, even games. They wanted him to be comfortable on his journey." Amara smiled. "They must have loved him very much." Kenty nodded. "They did, and they loved their work too. Building the pyramid gave them purpose. It connected them to the stars, to the gods, to eternity." He led her to a narrow passage that sloped upward. At the top was a small opening. Through it, Amara could see the night sky. The stars sparkled like diamonds on black silk. "The pyramids are aligned with the stars," Kenty said, "especially the 3 stars in the belt of Orion. The Egyptians believed the stars were the home of the gods." Amara stared in wonder. "So the pyramids point to heaven?" "In a way, yes," Kenty said. "They were built to help the pharaoh's spirit rise up and join the stars forever." For a moment they stood in silence, watching the sky. Amara felt small but also connected to something big and ancient. She felt the weight of history, the love and effort of thousands of people who lived long before her. "Thank you for showing me this," she said quietly. Kenty smiled. "You're welcome. Remember, Amara, the pyramids are more than stone. They are stories. They are dreams. They remind us what people can do when they work together and believe in something greater." Amara nodded. She would never forget this night. Kenty walked her back to the entrance. The golden glow began to fade. "Will I see you again?" Amara asked. "Perhaps," he said, "if you keep your heart open to the past." And with that, he disappeared into the stone. The doorway sealed itself. Amara stood alone under the stars, the pyramid silent and strong behind her. She turned and walked back across the sand toward her tent. But something had changed. She felt different, older, wiser, more curious than ever. When she crawled back into her blankets, her grandfather stirred. "Where did you go?" he murmured sleepily. Amara smiled. "Just to visit the stars." The next morning, Amara woke to warm sunlight streaming through the tent. She blinked and stretched. Had it all been a dream? She looked down at her hands. There, caught between her fingers, was a single grain of golden sand that seemed to shimmer differently from the rest. Her grandfather was already awake, sipping tea by the tent entrance. "Good morning, little explorer," he said with a gentle smile. "You slept deeply." Amara joined him, still thinking about Kenty and the secret chambers. She wanted to tell her grandfather everything, but the words felt too big, too strange. Instead, she asked, "Can we go see the pyramids again today?" Her grandfather chuckled. "I thought you might say that." After breakfast, they walked together across the desert. The sand was already growing hot beneath Amara's feet. In the distance, the Great Pyramid rose like a mountain made by human hands. "How did they even start building something so huge?" Amara asked. Her grandfather thought for a moment. "First, they chose the perfect spot. Then they made the ground completely flat and level. That was very important. If the base wasn't straight, the whole pyramid would be crooked. Amara imagined workers measuring carefully, making sure every corner was just right. They used tools made of copper and stone, her grandfather continued. And they had something very clever called a plumb line. It's a string with a weight on the end. It always hangs straight down. That helped them build straight up. Smart, Amara said. When they reached the base of the pyramid, her grandfather placed his hand on one of the massive stones. Feel this, he said. Amara pressed her palm against the warm limestone. It was rough and solid, ancient and real. Each block weighs as much as a car, her grandfather said, some even heavier. The workers cut them from quarries, then moved them using wooden sleds, ropes, and ramps. Ramps? Amara asked. Yes, they built long ramps out of mud, brick, and rubble. As the pyramid grew taller, the ramps grew longer. It was like a road that went up and up. Amara pictured hundreds of people pulling giant stones, singing work songs to keep their rhythm steady. Did it take a long time? She asked. About 20 years for the Great Pyramid, her grandfather said. Thousands of workers came every year, especially during the flood season when they couldn't farm. It was an honor to help build the pharaoh's eternal home. Amara thought about that. 20 years. That was longer than she'd been alive, longer than her parents had been alive. They walked slowly around the pyramid's base. Amara noticed the stones fit together so tightly that she couldn't slip even a piece of paper between them. They were master builders, her grandfather said proudly. They understood math, astronomy, and engineering. They didn't have machines, but they had knowledge. And they had each other. As they walked, Amara saw other tourists taking photos and reading guidebooks. A group of school children sat in the shade while their teacher explained how the pyramids were built. Amara listened closely. The teacher said the workers lived in nearby villages. They were paid with food, beer, and bread. They had doctors to care for them when they were hurt. Archaeologists had found their homes, their tools, even their bakeries. So they weren't forced to work? One child asked. No, the teacher said kindly. They were skilled workers who took pride in their craft. Building the pyramid was hard, but it was also meaningful. They were creating something that would last forever. Amara felt a warm glow in her chest. She thought of Kenti again. How he'd spoken with such love about the workers and their purpose. Her grandfather led her to the eastern side of the pyramid where 2 long pits had been discovered. They found boats here, he said. Wooden boats buried in pieces meant to carry the pharaoh across the sky. Boats in the desert? Amara giggled. The Egyptians believed the sun was a boat that sailed across the heavens each day, her grandfather explained. So they buried boats with the pharaoh so he could travel with the sun god Ra. Amara loved that idea, a boat sailing through the stars. They sat together in the shade and drank water. The desert wind blew softly, carrying whispers of the past. Why did they care so much about the afterlife? Amara asked. Her grandfather gazed at the pyramid. Because they believed life didn't end with death. They thought it transformed. The body stayed here, but the spirit journeyed on. So they prepared carefully. They wanted their loved ones to be safe and happy in the next world. Amara thought that was beautiful. That's why they made mummies, her grandfather added. Preserving the body was a way of honoring the person. It took 70 days. Special priests would remove the organs, dry the body with salt, then wrap it in linen. They said prayers at every step. It sounds like they really cared, Amara said. They did, her grandfather agreed. Death wasn't something to fear, it was another adventure. As the sun climbed higher, they decided to visit the Sphinx. The giant statue lay stretched across the sand, part lion, part human, watching the horizon with calm, eternal eyes. Amara stood before it, feeling very small. "Who is he?" she whispered. "Some say he guards the pyramids," her grandfather said. "Others say he represents the pharaoh's strength and wisdom. His face may be modeled after Pharaoh Khafre." The Sphinx's gaze seemed kind, not frightening. Amara waved at him just in case he could see her. Her grandfather laughed softly. "You have a good heart, Amara." As they turned to leave, Amara glanced back one more time. For just a flicker of a moment, she thought she saw Kenti standing beside the Sphinx, smiling at her. But when she blinked, he was gone. Amara and her grandfather walked slowly back toward the Great Pyramid. The sand crunched softly beneath their sandals. The air smelled dry and ancient, like old papyrus scrolls. Amara's mind buzzed with everything she had learned. Workers who sang while they built, boats buried for journeys across the sky. A giant sphinx watching over it all. She felt like she had stepped into a storybook, except this story was real. "Can we go inside?" Amara asked, pointing at the pyramid's entrance. Her grandfather smiled. "Yes, but it's narrow and dark. Are you ready?" Amara nodded eagerly. She had come all this way. She wasn't going to stop now. They joined a small group of visitors at the entrance. A guide explained that the passage inside was steep and low. "Take your time," the guide said. "Hold the railings, and remember you're walking where pharaohs once rested." Amara's heart thumped with excitement. She followed her grandfather into the pyramid. The air changed immediately. It was cooler inside, and the walls seemed to hum with silence. Electric lights lit the narrow corridor, but shadows danced along the stone. The passage sloped downward at first, then climbed sharply upward. Amara had to duck her head. The ceiling felt close, the walls tight. But she wasn't afraid, she was curious. Every stone around her had been placed by hand thousands of years ago. She touched the wall gently, imagining the workers who had carried these blocks, who had measured and fitted them so perfectly that not even a knife blade could slip between them. "They didn't use mortar," her grandfather said quietly. "Just skill and patience." Amara marveled at that. No glue, no cement, just stone on stone held by weight and wisdom. After a long climb, they reached a larger space. The grand gallery stretched above them, tall and breathtaking. The walls rose in layers, each one slightly closer than the last, creating a corridor that seemed to reach toward the heavens. Amara tilted her head back. It felt like standing inside a giant's hallway. "This is incredible," she whispered. Her grandfather nodded. The Egyptians were master builders. They understood weight, balance, and geometry better than almost anyone in their time. They continued upward until they reached the king's chamber. The room was simple, made entirely of red granite. In the center sat a large stone box, the pharaoh's sarcophagus. It was empty now, its lid long gone. But Amara could imagine what it once held. A king, wrapped in linen, surrounded by treasures and prayers, waiting for his journey to begin. It's so quiet, Amara said. Yes, her grandfather agreed. This room was built to last forever. The stones above us weigh tons, but they're arranged so carefully that the chamber has never collapsed. Amara walked slowly around the sarcophagus. She thought of the pharaoh who had once rested here. Did he know people would still visit thousands of years later? Did he know his pyramid would still stand, strong and proud under the Egyptian sun? She closed her eyes and made a silent promise. She would remember this. She would tell her friends. She would never forget the workers, the planners, the dreamers who made this place real. When they stepped back outside, the sunlight felt warm and welcoming. Amara blinked, adjusting to the brightness. The desert stretched endlessly around them, golden and glowing. She looked up at the pyramid once more, this time with deeper respect. They really did it, she said softly. They built something that lasts. Her grandfather squeezed her hand. And now you've walked through it. You've touched history. They sat on a low stone wall and shared a snack. Amara munched on a date and watched tourists from all over the world admire the pyramids. Some took pictures. Some sat quietly, some smiled and pointed. Everyone seemed to feel the same wonder she did. Grandfather, Amara said, why do people still care about the pyramids? He thought for a moment. Because they remind us what humans can do when they work together, when they believe in something. The pyramids weren't built by one person. They were built by thousands, all working toward the same goal. And they didn't have machines or computers, just hands, hearts, and hope. Amara liked that answer. It made her feel connected to those workers, even across all that time. As the afternoon wore on, they visited the Solar Boat Museum. Inside, Amara saw one of the actual boats that had been buried beside the pyramid. It was enormous, made of cedar wood with a long, curved hull and elegant lines. A sign explained that it had been taken apart and buried in pieces, then carefully reconstructed by archaeologists. This boat is over 4,000 years old, the guide said. And it still looks beautiful. Amara stared at it in awe. She imagined it sailing across a sea of stars, carrying a king to meet the sun god Ra. She imagined oars dipping into rivers of light. Before they left, her grandfather bought her a small souvenir, a tiny carved pyramid made of stone. Amara held it carefully in her palm. So you'll always remember, he said. I will, Amara promised. As they walked toward the exit, the sun began to sink lower in the sky. The pyramids glowed orange and gold in the fading light. Shadows stretched long across the sand. Amara turned back one last time. Somewhere in the distance, she thought she heard laughter, faint and joyful, like the echo of workers singing as they built. She smiled. Maybe Kenti was still there, watching over his pyramid, proud of what they had created together. And maybe, just maybe, the desert remembered every hand that shaped it. The drive home was quiet and peaceful. Amara watched the pyramids grow smaller through the window until they disappeared behind the dunes. She held her little stone pyramid close, feeling its smooth edges. That night she dreamed of ancient Egypt. She dreamed of workers singing under the sun, of boats sailing rivers that sparkled like silver, of stars wheeling slowly across the endless sky. When she woke the next morning, she felt different, older somehow, like she carried a secret the whole world knew but had forgotten to feel. At breakfast, her mother asked about the trip. Amara's words tumbled out fast and bright. She told her about the tunnels, the sarcophagus, the solar boat. She explained how the pyramids were built without modern tools. Her mother listened, smiling. "Sounds like you learned a lot," she said. "I did," Amara replied, "but I want to learn more." Her grandfather had left her a stack of books about ancient Egypt. Amara spent the morning flipping through them, studying pictures of pharaohs, gods, and daily life along the Nile. She learned that pyramids weren't just piles of stone. They were carefully planned monuments. Architects drew detailed plans on papyrus scrolls. Engineers calculated angles and measurements with impressive accuracy. The Great Pyramid was originally covered in smooth white limestone that reflected sunlight like a mirror. Imagine that. A glowing mountain rising from the desert. She read about the workers who lived in nearby villages. They weren't prisoners. They were paid in food, clothing, and shelter. Archaeologists had found their homes, their tools, even their bread ovens. These workers had families. They celebrated festivals. They told jokes and sang songs. They were real people just like her. Amara traced her finger over a drawing of a pyramid's interior. She studied the passageways, the chambers, the hidden shafts that pointed toward specific stars. The ancient Egyptians believed the soul of the pharaoh would travel through those shafts and join the gods in the sky. That's why they aligned the pyramids so precisely. They were building a bridge between earth and heaven. One page showed a diagram of the constellation Orion. The 3 pyramids at Giza were positioned to match the 3 stars in Orion's belt. Amara looked up from the book, her mind spinning. They built on Earth what they saw in the sky. They turned starlight into stone. Her younger brother wandered in and plopped beside her. "What are you reading?" he asked. "Pyramids," Amara said. "Want to hear something cool?" He nodded. "Okay." The Great Pyramid was the tallest building in the world for almost 4,000 years. 4,000. Nothing was taller until way, way later. Her brother's eyes widened. Whoa. And they built it without trucks or cranes, just ramps, ropes, and lots of people working together. How many people? Maybe tens of thousands, and it probably took 20 years or more. Her brother whistled low. That's a long time. Yeah, Amara agreed, but they believed it mattered. They wanted their king to be safe in the afterlife, so they worked hard, and they made something incredible. Her brother looked at the pictures. "Do you think we could build a pyramid?" Amara grinned. "Maybe a small one. Out of blocks in the backyard." They spent the afternoon doing exactly that. Using wooden blocks, stones, and a lot of imagination, they constructed a little pyramid in the garden. It wasn't perfect. It wobbled and leaned slightly to one side, but it stood. Their mother came outside and laughed. "Look at my little architects," she said. "Grandfather would be proud." Amara stepped back and admired their work. Building even a tiny pyramid was harder than it looked. She thought of Kenti and the thousands of workers who hauled massive stones across the desert. She thought of their sore muscles, their sunburned skin, their tired feet. And yet they kept going. Because they believed. That belief built mountains. Later that evening, Amara sat on her balcony and watched the stars appear one by one. She found Orion easily now. Her grandfather had taught her how. She wondered if the ancient Egyptians stood in this same spot looking up at the same stars. Probably not this exact T-spot, but somewhere close, under the same sky. "Hi, Orion," she whispered. "Thanks for inspiring the pyramids." The stars didn't answer, but they twinkled a little brighter. At least that's what it felt like. Before bed, Amara wrote in her journal. She described everything she'd seen and learned. She drew a pyramid with careful lines and shaded it with her colored pencils. At the bottom, she wrote, "The pyramids remind us that people can do amazing things when they work together and believe in something bigger than themselves." She closed the journal and turned off the light. Tomorrow she would go to school and tell her friends. She'd show them pictures. Maybe her teacher would let her do a presentation. She wanted everyone to know the truth about the pyramids. Not just that they were big and old, but that they were built by real people with real skills and real dreams. As she drifted towards sleep, Amara smiled. The pyramids weren't just monuments to kings. They were monuments to everyone who lifted a stone, drew a plan, sang a song, or believed in tomorrow. And now, across thousands of years, she believed too. The next morning, Amara woke early. Sunlight poured through her window like liquid gold. She dressed quickly and ate her breakfast, still thinking about the pyramids. Her mother noticed. "You're very quiet this morning," she said. Amara looked up from her cereal. "I was just thinking, what if we went back to the pyramids, just one more time?" Her mother smiled. "I think that can be arranged." So they packed a small bag with water, snacks, and Amara's journal. Her brother came too, still excited from building their mini pyramid the day before. They drove through the city and out toward the desert once more. As the pyramids came into view, Amara felt her heart flutter. She would never get tired of seeing them. This time they walked around the base of the Great Pyramid. Amara ran her fingers along the rough stone. Each block was huge, taller than her father. She tried to imagine lifting just one. Impossible. But thousands of people working together. That changed everything. Her brother crouched down and peered into a gap between stones. "Do you think there are secret tunnels?" he asked. "There are passages inside," Amara said. "They lead to chamber, to where the pharaohs were buried. But they're not secret anymore. Archaeologists explored them a long time ago." What did they find? Golden treasures, beautiful paintings, hieroglyphs that told stories. Her brother's eyes sparkled. "Like a treasure map?" "Sort of," Amara said. "But the real treasure is the knowledge. Learning how people lived and what they believed." They walked toward the Sphinx next. The giant stone creature sat calmly in the sand, its gaze fixed on the horizon. Amara stood in front of it and looked up. The Sphinx had the body of a lion and the face of a human. Some said it was a guardian protecting the pyramids and the souls inside. "Why did they make it?" her brother asked. "To protect the tombs," Amara said. "And maybe to show strength and wisdom. Lions are strong, humans are wise. Together they're powerful." Her brother nodded slowly. "That makes sense." Their mother took a photo of them standing beneath the Sphinx. Amara smiled, but inside she felt something deeper. She felt connected, not just to this place, but to everyone who had ever stood here and wondered. A guide walked by and overheard them talking. He stopped and smiled. "You know a lot about the pyramids, young lady." Amara blushed. My grandfather taught me. He taught you well, the guide said. Would you like to know something extra special? Amara nodded eagerly. The guide pointed toward the sky. The 3 pyramids of Giza are arranged to match the 3 stars in Orion's belt. The ancient Egyptians believed Orion was connected to Osiris, the god of the afterlife, so they built the pyramids to mirror the heavens. Amara's mouth fell open. They built them like the stars? Exactly. They wanted the earth to reflect the sky. It was their way of connecting this world to the next. Amara looked at the 3 pyramids standing in a row. Then she imagined the stars above them at night, perfectly aligned. It gave her goosebumps. That's amazing, she whispered. The guide smiled. History is full of amazing things. Keep learning, and you'll discover even more. He waved and walked on. Amara stood very still. She thought about the workers, the stars, the stones, the songs. Everything fit together like pieces of a puzzle. The pyramids weren't just piles of rock. They were messages. Messages from people who lived long ago telling the future. We were here, we believed, we built, we dreamed. Her mother gently touched her shoulder. Ready to go, Habibti? Amara nodded. But she took one last long look. She wanted to remember everything. The color of the sand, the shape of the stones, the way the sun made the pyramids glow. On the drive home, Amara was quiet again. But this time it was a peaceful quiet. Her mind was full, but her heart was calm. That night she opened her journal one more time. She wrote slowly, choosing her words carefully. The pyramids teach us that people can do incredible things, not because they had magic or machines, but because they had hope, teamwork, and a dream. They remind us to look up at the stars and imagine what's possible. And they show us that even after thousands of years, the things we build with love and care can last forever. She drew a small star at the bottom of the page. Then she closed the journal and placed it on her nightstand. Her grandfather's book sat beside it. She ran her hand over the cover and whispered, "Thank you, Grandpa." Outside, the stars began to appear. Orion climbed slowly into the sky, his belt shining bright. Somewhere far away, the pyramid stood silent in the desert, waiting for the next person to visit, to wonder, to learn. And Amara knew she would go back again someday. Maybe many times. Because now, the pyramids weren't just old buildings, they were proof. Proof that humans could reach for the stars. Proof that dreams could become stone. Proof that history wasn't just something in books. It was alive, it was real, and it was waiting for anyone brave enough to listen. Amara smiled and closed her eyes. Tomorrow she would share everything she learned. But tonight she would rest and dream of deserts, stars, and ancient hands building wonders beneath the endless sky. Amara climbed into bed that night feeling different. Not older exactly, but fuller. Like her heart had grown just a little bit bigger. She thought about all the people who had touched those stones before her. The workers who sang as they built. The artists who painted stories on the walls. The families who said goodbye to their kings and hoped they would sail safely to the stars. She thought about Kenti, the glowing boy who showed her the pyramid secrets. Was he real? She wasn't sure anymore. But it didn't matter. What mattered was what she learned. What mattered was the feeling she carried home with her. Her mother came in to say goodnight. "Did you have a good day?" she asked, tucking the blanket around Amara. The best, Amara said softly. I learned that the past isn't really gone. It's still here. In the stones, in the stars, in the stories we tell. Her mother kissed her forehead. That's a beautiful way to think about it. As her mother left the room, Amara stared up at the ceiling. She imagined workers hauling stones, architects drawing plans, priests saying prayers. She imagined boats sailing rivers of light. She imagined a boy named Kenti forever guarding the pyramid he loved, and she made a promise. She would never forget what she learned. She would tell others. She would keep the story alive. Because that's what the pyramids were asking for. Not to be worshipped, not to be feared, just to be remembered, just to be understood. Outside, the stars blinked awake one by one. Orion rose into the sky, his belt glowing steady and bright. Somewhere in the desert, the pyramids stood tall, holding their secrets close, waiting patiently for the next curious heart to come and listen. Amara closed her eyes and smiled. History wasn't something dusty and boring. It was alive, it was magic, and it belonged to everyone brave enough to care. Sleep came softly, like sand slipping through fingers. And in her dreams she walked with workers, painted with artists, and sailed with kings across rivers made of stars.